Hey viewers, Kevin Carlson with Crysalli, and in this video we're going to install a Crysalli countertop system. So we've unpacked this is a CR1 that we're doing the install. We've unpacked it, we've taken off the protective cover that's over the mirrored finished stainless steel. We've installed the tap markers here and installed the drip pan. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to locate the install kit, because that's going to have all of the components that you need to make the connection from the angle stop adapter, which is your water inlet, to the building, and all the fittings and connections you need to make all the way up to the point of dispense. I've located the install kit, but before I do any of the plumbing, the first thing I like to do on a countertop system is I like to fill the water bath. And the reason for that is I can fill the water bath and then I can get the machine running so we can start building the ice bank while we're making the other connections. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the water bath. And important thing to note is you want to fill the water bath to where it's about 1/4 inch below the top of this white pipe stem. Once you fill this, if you want to add like a teaspoon or a capful of bleach or sanitizer to help keep the bath sanitized, that's completely acceptable. If you want more details on how to fill the water bath, we do have a separate video on that. So the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start plumbing the water inlet to the chiller. So the first thing, I've got this 3/8 push fit by Stem street elbow. I'm going to go ahead and push it into this bulkhead fitting. This is the water inlet fitting. Then I'm going to take the blue 3/8 OD John Guest tubing that comes with the install kit. I'm going to go ahead and completely insert that and pull on it just to make sure it's fully engaged. Then I'm going to take my red locking clip and engage it. As you can see, I've engaged into the groove. That'll hold that tubing secured. One thing I didn't mention earlier is these countertop systems come with these 4-inch feet or legs that have levelers on them. So if you have an uneven surface, you can adjust the height of the legs up and down so that the system sits level. So the next step, I'm going to connect the other end of that 3/8 John Guest tubing to the outlet of the filtration. So the filtration I had previously installed. If you want details on how to install and prime the filtration system, we do have a separate video on that. But what you're going to want to do is just take that blue John Guest tubing, insert it firmly just like we did on the previous one, and then insert that locking clip to make sure it's locked in place. Now that we've made all the connections from the angle stop adapter, the filtration's installed, from the outlet of the filter to the inlet of the dispense system is installed. Now we're going to open up the water inlet to the system and check the system for leaks. All right, I've checked the system for leaks. Now we're going to purge all the air from the system. So I'm going to open up the 2 valves until I get a nice steady flow of water out both faucets. After purging the air from the system, I went ahead and I plugged the power cord into a 120 volt, 20 amp receptacle. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the power on. As soon as I turn it on, you're going to hear the compressor kick on, and then you'll see the agitator motor or agitator pump is actually recirculating the water in the water bath. And we will also, sometimes the carbonator pump, if you don't properly prime the system, the carbonator pump will kick on, but you just need to prime a little bit more to purge some of that air out of the carbonator. So now that we've got the refrigeration system running and we're building an ice bank, we can go ahead and make the connections. The drain line, we're going to run this to a floor sink or to a drain, and then we've got the CO2 line that we got to make that connection. So now we're going to connect the CO2. In this particular installation, they already have a CO2 with a primary CO2 regulator hooked up to another beverage system. In order to tap into that, as long as they are operating above 80 psi, 75 to 80 psi, we can go ahead and install a Crysalli secondary regulator to control the pressure to our carbonation system. In the install kit, we supply some Oetikers, some 1/4-inch tubing, a splicer, which you can use. I've utilized this to tap into the existing installation. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to install the secondary regulator, and then we'll show how to set it up. If you want details on how to, if you're not using a secondary regulator and you want details on how to install the primary regulator, we do have a dedicated video for that. Before you throw away your packaging, one thing we do is we supply a couple fish eyes with the secondary regulator. These are 1/4-inch. I call them fish eyes, but they're basically going to create the seal between the flare nut and the regulator. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in one of the fish eyes into this. I got this 1/4-inch flare nut with a 1/4-inch barb by 1/4-inch flare, and I'm going to go ahead and install that on the inlet of this primary regulator. So start by hand tightening it. Once you get it hand tightened, then you want to take your wrench and just tighten it down snug. You don't need to over tighten it because then you might over compress that washer. Now we've got that installed. So here, this is the back side of the primary regulator. I've installed a 1/4-inch T fitting in here, crimped it using a 10.5 Oetiker, and now I'm going to go ahead and make the connection. This is the 1/4-inch braided tubing that we supply with the install kits. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this to length. I install my, make sure you insert your Oetiker clamp off first, and then we're going to insert this over the barb, and then I like to position the Oetiker clamp right over the second barb, and then make the crimp, crimping it completely. Now you've got a knife secured. So we got the CO2 inlet from the primary regulator going to the inlet of the secondary regulator, and now we're going to go ahead and make the connection to the carbonation system, or to our chiller from, it's going to be, the outlet is going to be our low pressure setting side. So as you notice, we took the inlet, the CO2 inlet to this primary, or to the secondary regulator, in on the left. It could also come in on the right. This one has a plug on the right. I actually, when it came from the factory, I moved it from the left side to the right side for this installation. But these are all connected. This is a pass-through. If you wanted to connect multiple secondary regulators in parallel, you could just unscrew this and add another one, and everything that's on this horizontal line is actually connected. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the outlet, which is your regulated pressure. I'm going to connect it to our chiller system, our carbonation chiller system. So this CO2 line going to our system comes with the 1/4-inch nut and stem already mounted onto the CO2 line. I'm going to go ahead and drop that fisheye, that second fisheye. Make sure you go with, you want the conical section facing down, so the tapered is up. I'm going to go ahead and install that, and then just want to hand tighten it, and then again take your wrench and go ahead and secure it snug, but don't over tighten. All right, so now that I've installed the secondary regulator, we've made all the connections. I'm going to go ahead and open the CO2 at the CO2 tank, just rotating it counterclockwise. As you can see on this particular system, the green, our CO2 tank, is full, and this top one is telling us what our pressure is. It looks like this is about 100 psi. So now we're going to go set the pressure at the secondary regulator. So in order to set the pressure at the secondary regulator, this knob, you could pull it outwards and it'll unlock the bonnet so you can rotate your pressure. So on the Crysalli systems, all of our carbonation systems, our sparkling water systems, we want to set the pressure at 75 psi. So I'm going to go rotate this up to 75 psi. Once I get there, I'm going to lock this in place. Just snapping it so it can't be tampered with. And you also want to check now all your lines, everything's pressurized. It's a good time to check all your clamps and crimps and connections to the regulator. Make sure there's no CO2 leaks. Now that we've got the CO2 set to the system, we're going to go ahead and come up to the front and prime the system. But before priming the system, the first thing you should do is tighten the coupling nut. The coupling nut is what secures the shank to the faucet, and every system comes with a couple tools which should be left behind with the staff so they can use the Allen wrench to adjust the flow of the faucets, and then the faucet wrench is so they can keep the coupling nut tight and secure. Over time this will become loose, so you want to tighten it regularly, and important that you leave this with the staff so they can do that. So if you open the faucet, you want to adjust your flow using this Allen wrench. So if you insert the Allen wrench in and rotate it, you can adjust the flow up or down by rotating. So I just like to set the flow rate. It's a nice steady flow, and then I'll go ahead and I'll prime the carbonation side. So on the sparkling water side, what we're going to do is we're going to draw the water off. I can adjust the flow, give us a nice steady flow. And what we're going to want to do is listen for that carbonator pump to cycle on, and we want to cycle it on a couple times before walking away from the unit. So there it's cycled on. I'm going to let it cycle off, and then I'm going to run it again. And as you can see, the flow of the water changed. You can see that it does have some sparkling water. I'm going to lower the flow a tad bit. It seems a little bit fast. It's really fast. So I got the flow to where I want it. Carbonator pump cycled on a couple times. Last but not least is we'll do the taste test. Thank you.